everybody. Hey, it's Jodi here. Welcome to Practical Miracles, where I give practical steps to bring miracles into your life. And before I get started on this episode about what are your emotional blocks and how to get rid of them, please subscribe to my channel so you don't miss a video coming out. All right, without further ado, what are these things that we call emotional blocks? I guess you could call them a lot of different names, but I'm just describing what this concept is, like emotional blocks, like things that kind of stop you from taking action, or things that stop you from taking risks, things that stop you from opening your heart to people. And all emotional blocks are based in the same thing. And they could come from anywhere, though. That's the thing, is that these emotional blocks could come from negative experiences that you've had in your life. And it could be something quite simple as one person put you down. That could create energy in your body and in your mind and in your memory that makes you feel vulnerable or makes you feel inadequate. And that starts to grow, right? It's like a snowball effect. There's one little teeny piece of lint, and then everything, it's like a magnet for a lot of other things that go along with it. So if somebody gave you a criticism about something really specific, then you're going to experience the world looking for other things that are evidence for that thing. Does that make sense? It's so heavy on our hearts and our minds to always be looking for evidence in our own inadequacies. And there are two things that make the base for our emotional blocks, which could come, like I said, from any kind of experience, any kind of, mostly negative, but any kind of experience could bring up these negative blocks, could start that little lint that everything ends up sticking to, and it could grow quite big. A lot of times these things start small and little, and they have a tendency to take on a life of their own. And this is not good for anybody. So there's two main bases of it: fear and guilt. So two main bases of all our emotional blocks are fear and guilt. And the reason why fear stops us from doing things is because we feel vulnerable. And we have this innate responsibility to protect ourselves from vulnerability, right? We feel this responsibility that we have to protect ourselves from vulnerability. So anything that's fear, that brings up fear or increases fear, is going to stop us from taking risks, because biologically, we're like, don't do that risk, you might be vulnerable. So that creates an emotional block. And sometimes they're not physical dangers. There's something we might perceive as an emotional danger, yet it still blocks us. It still creates the block. Then guilt. And the reason why guilt creates an emotional block, the reason why it prevents us from doing things that we might want to do, is because we are worried about exposure. We're worried that other people are going to notice our own inadequacies. So guilt is about feeling like you're not good enough, that you're not smart enough, not pretty enough, not cool enough. This is so part of our culture, to feel inadequate, to feel like that you're not enough. And guilt is a weird word. People describe it all kinds of different ways. They define it all kinds of different ways. This is pretty much an overgeneralized definition of the word guilt, how I think of it, because it is such a huge problem. It's a much bigger problem than we tend to recognize. And if you want more information about guilt, go ahead and get my Letting Go MP3. It's a free MP3, jodiehmann.com/letgo, and learn about why we have guilt and what we should do about guilt. But the reason why guilt blocks us is we're worried about exposing ourselves, like other people seeing that we're inadequate, because then what happens? We get left out. And humans, they don't like to be left out. In fact, I did a video about this, and you could look that up. Like, why do we want to belong? That's the name of the video, if you want to look that up. So these are the basis of our emotional blocks. So what do you do about them? I think we have to address them head on. We have to decide consciously if that's helping us in our life or not. Once we're aware of them, then we can make different decisions about keeping them or not keeping them. And often we have these emotional blocks, but they're not in our awareness, but they affect us, mind, body, and soul, but they're not in our awareness. And once we realize, I'm afraid of being vulnerable in this kind of situation, once we have this awareness, we could be like, that's not actually dangerous. I could be okay. Why am I afraid of that? Fear grows when it's evasive. when we don't really understand it, when it has a bit of mystery to it. Once we get rid of the mystery, once we're really clear about what we're afraid of, often we drop those fears because they just don't really make any sense. And then guilt, once you realize what you think you're inadequate about, what are those standards and how high they are and unrealistic they are, once we become aware of those things, it's so much easier to let go. All right, so I'm so happy that you watched this video, and please come on over to my website, jodi-𝒔𝒐𝒓𝒔𝒆, for more articles and videos on how to love yourself, open your heart, release fear, and create practical miracles in your life. If you like this video, please like it and share it and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next video. But until then, let that you want to be shine through.